Caffeine, the most widely consumed drug on Earth. Caffeine doesn't actually give you energy. It blocks adenosine, the chemical that makes you feel tired. Your brain keeps firing because it can't receive the slow-down signal. The result: you feel alert, focused, and productive. The catch: when it wears off, the adenosine comes flooding back. And that's when the crash hits. Over time, your brain grows more adenosine receptors to compensate. That's why your first cup stopped working. That's tolerance. That's addiction. Mild as it is, nicotine is deceptively powerful for such a small molecule. It mimics acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter involved in muscle movement and cognition, and triggers a dopamine release that creates an immediate sense of calm and focus. The problem? It's one of the fastest-acting addictions known. Within seconds of inhaling, nicotine reaches the brain. The reward is instant. The craving comes back within hours. Studies show that quitting nicotine produces withdrawal symptoms comparable in intensity to heroin withdrawal. Nicotine works by blocking the reuptake of dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine. Normally, after your brain fires these chemicals, they get recycled back in. Cocaine jams that recycling mechanism, so your brain floods with dopamine. The result is an intense, but short, rush of euphoria, energy, and confidence. The high lasts maybe 20 to 30 minutes. Then it's gone, and that's exactly what makes cocaine so dangerous. The crash is sharp and fast. Users often describe it as the worst they've ever felt immediately after feeling the best they've ever felt. That pattern is the engine of addiction. Long-term use physically shrinks the brain's prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for decision-making and impulse control. Methamphetamine does everything cocaine does, but harder, longer, and more destructively. It forces neurons to release enormous amounts of dopamine, up to 3 times more than cocaine, and blocks reuptake at the same time. The high can last 6 to 12 hours, but meth essentially burns through your dopamine system. With chronic use, the brain loses its ability to produce or respond to dopamine naturally. Things that used to bring joy, food, relationships, achievements, stop working. The only thing that triggers a dopamine response is more meth. This is neurological damage, and in many cases, it's permanent. Alcohol is the world's most socially accepted drug, and one of the most pharmacologically complex. In low doses, it actually behaves like a stimulant. It suppresses the brain systems that regulate social inhibition, so you feel looser, chattier, more confident. As the dose increases, the true depressant effects kick in. Coordination fails. Judgment slips. Reaction time slows. At very high doses, alcohol suppresses the brainstem functions that control breathing and heart rate. That's what kills people in alcohol poisoning. Long-term, alcohol damages the liver, shrinks the hippocampus, the memory center, and is physically addictive in a way that makes withdrawal potentially fatal without medical supervision. Benzodiazepines, commonly called benzos, are prescription medications designed to treat anxiety, panic disorders, and seizures. They're among the most prescribed drugs in the world. They work almost identically to alcohol. By enhancing GABA activity and calming neural activity, medically they're effective. But tolerance builds quickly, sometimes within weeks. And dependence follows, what many patients don't realize. Benzo withdrawal is one of the most dangerous withdrawals in medicine. Unlike opioid withdrawal, which is agonizing but rarely fatal, benzo withdrawal can cause seizures that kill. Barbiturates were the precursor to benzos, used heavily in the 1950s and 60s as sedatives and sleep aids. They work on the same GABA system, but with far less precision. The difference between a therapeutic dose and a lethal dose is dangerously small. This is why barbiturate overdose became tragically common in Hollywood's golden age, and why they've been largely replaced by benzos in modern medicine. Morphine and heroin morphine binds to opioid receptors in your brain and spinal cord, blocking pain signals and triggering an enormous release of dopamine. Heroin is essentially morphine with a small chemical modification that makes it cross the blood-brain barrier faster. The result: a rush of warmth, euphoria, and complete absence of pain, physical and emotional. Users often describe it as feeling completely loved and safe, more intensely than anything else they've ever experienced. The withdrawal is legendary in its cruelty. Muscle cramps, vomiting, insomnia, extreme anxiety. It feels like the worst flu of your life, combined with feeling like you're dying. The body has reorganized itself around the drug, and without it, it doesn't know how to function. Prescription opioid crisis didn't start in dark alleys. It started in doctors' offices. In the 1990s, pharmaceutical companies aggressively marketed oxycodone as a low-addiction pain reliever. Millions of patients were prescribed it for injuries, surgeries, and chronic pain. Many became addicted through legal prescriptions. When prescriptions dried up, many turned to heroin or to fentanyl, a synthetic opioid 50 to 100 times more potent than morphine. The result: over 500,000 overdose deaths in the United States alone over a 20-year period. A public health catastrophe with no precedent. Psilocybin is converted by the body into psilocin, which binds to serotonin receptors, particularly in the visual and default mode network regions of the brain. The default mode network is sometimes called the ego network. It's what gives you your sense of a continuous, stable self. Psilocybin essentially dissolves it. Users report the boundaries between self and environment becoming fluid. Colors intensify. Patterns appear on surfaces. Deep emotions surface. Time distorts. What's scientifically fascinating? Psilocybin dramatically increases connectivity between brain regions that don't normally talk to each other, producing what researchers call hyper-connected neural states. Current clinical research at Johns Hopkins and NYU suggests psilocybin may be the most effective treatment ever discovered for severe depression, addiction, and PTSD, with effects lasting months from a single dose. LSD was first synthesized by Albert Hofmann in 1938 and accidentally discovered in 1943 when he absorbed a small amount through his fingertips and experienced the world's first acid trip. LSD also acts on serotonin receptors, but with extraordinary potency. An active dose is measured in micrograms. 1 grain of salt contains enough LSD for dozens of doses. Effects begin 30 to 60 minutes after ingestion and can last 8 to 12 hours. Visual hallucinations, synesthesia, the blending of senses, profound introspective states, and sometimes overwhelming fear or euphoria. Unlike opioids or stimulants, LSD is not physically addictive. The body develops rapid tolerance, preventing daily use from being physiologically effective. But it is psychologically powerful. Bad trips can be psychologically destabilizing, and for individuals with a predisposition to schizophrenia, LSD can trigger psychotic episodes. TCMDM is often classified as both a stimulant and a psychedelic, and it truly sits at the intersection of both. It floods the brain simultaneously with serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine, producing feelings of intense emotional warmth, empathy, energy, and connection. Users often describe it as feeling unconditional love for everyone around them. But MDMA is also neurotoxic in high doses. It can damage serotonin-producing neurons, which partly explains why heavy MDMA users often experience depression and emotional blunting in the weeks following use. This is sometimes called the calm down. Interestingly, MDMA-assisted psychotherapy is currently in Phase 3 FDA trials for PTSD, showing some of the most remarkable outcomes in psychiatric history. Ketamine was developed in the 1960s as an anesthetic, and it's still used in surgery today, including in war zones and pediatric medicine. At low doses, it produces dissociation, a dreamlike detachment from your surroundings. At high doses, users describe what's called the K-hole, a state of complete dissociation from the body, described as something between a near-death experience and complete ego dissolution. What's remarkable? Ketamine is now FDA approved as an antidepressant. It works within hours, unlike traditional antidepressants that take weeks. It appears to rapidly regenerate synaptic connections in the prefrontal cortex. For treatment-resistant depression, it may be life-saving. PCP, Penicillin PCP, originally developed as a surgical anesthetic, produces a far more extreme dissociative state than ketamine. At high doses, it can cause severe psychosis, delusions, and violence, not because it makes people crazy, but because it completely severs the brain's ability to process reality or pain. PCP is rarely used recreationally today, but its notoriety in the 1970s and 80s shaped much of the public discourse around dangerous drugs.